Greetings, gamers. Long time no see. I've tried to do this video a couple times now, and I start rambling a little bit too much. I'm going to try and keep it concise because I don't want to get another 40 minutes into a video of me just rambling onward. You haven't seen me for a couple of reasons. I got sick, and I've had some recurring health problems. Nothing life-threatening more than that I already had, meaning nothing worse than my bipolar depression. Uh, but even though you can't necessarily see it in my face, I've lost 30 pounds, or almost 30. It wavers a little like a pound, depending on the scale. But it's just an ongoing issue that they can give me medications for, but over-the-counter medications work just as well. So, I just have to be careful what I eat and what time I eat, because apparently if I eat too early, I get sick and my body doesn't digest it properly. And that's not fun. And I've also uh, developed something called angular colitis, which is the dead white skin that you see at the corner of the lips of people who have dentures or no teeth. And it's one of the few things that makes me vain, you know. It's that little bit of dead skin. And none of the treatment that they have offered, they've given me different steroids, they've given me recommendations for, you know, all sorts of chapped lip stuff, which none of it has worked. Not a single bit of it has diminished the fact. Well, what has happened is because the bone density, because I got dentures, because the bone density is gone that held your teeth in, because that eventually erodes, it causes the skin on the corners of my lips to overlap. And what happens is the saliva gets trapped there, and it basically damages the tissue. Um, I've been thinking, I wonder what would happen if I got a mouthpiece or a mouthpiece, but I don't know one that'll fit unless I wear my teeth at night when I sleep. And that kind of defeats the purpose of taking them out to get them clean, because they don't want you to brush them. You use a cleaner on them. You don't brush them because that erodes their material. And I got those because I was tired of having cavities, because genetically my teeth have never been good ever since I was a little kid. I was always getting cavities constantly. It didn't matter what I ate, what I drank, nothing. How well I took care of them either. I mean, I brushed, I flossed, I've tried all that. I'm almost always had bleeding gums. But I eventually went and just said, I'm done. And the dentist pulled them, and he looked at one of my teeth and went, "Bless your heart, son. You've had 3 root canals. I can see you tried to save that tooth." And it was not his accent, but uh, I did try and save my teeth, but eventually it just got too expensive and too frustrating and too hurtful. Uh, and I generally like to wear them when I shoot videos. I generally like to be shaved. It's just the image I wish to use to represent myself is got a little bit of vanity. Not a lot, but a little bit. Like, I don't mind having glasses or my hair being messed up by headphones or a lot of other things. But there are small things that pester me and bug me. So they have impacted me shooting videos. But the health problem has been the main one. It's irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, which is kind of just a general diagnosis. They're not exactly sure what it is. It could be diverticulitis. It could be, all sorts of intestinal inflammations or things that could be causing it. And they have not found anything so far that they can track it down to. So in the meantime, I've lost 30 pounds, which is, a good thing for me, because I was getting a little too heavy in my opinion. Uh, but you start adding stuff up, and my health just fluctuates so much, and my sleeping was horrid because they put me on a dose of medication because I don't sleep well, and so they put me on a dose of medication, sleeping to help me sleep at night because the racing thoughts, the anxiety that I have, the depression, all that stuff adds up to keep my brain from shutting up and going to sleep. So they gave me something that's a pretty strong drug to sleep on. But the first dosage they sent me, it wasn't working. It wasn't putting me to sleep. So they increased it. And that increase left me exhausted all the time. I'd wake up, I'd shower, I might get on the computer, read a few things, type a few things, uh, be up maybe 2 hours, go back to bed, and then repeat that in 4 or 5 hours. And that's not how I wanted to live my life. So I cut back by half a dose, by half a pill, and uh, basically that half a pill is making a difference. I'm sleeping now a little more regularly. I'm getting a little more regular sleep without being too exhausted. I still wake up tired, but I'm not like I need to go back to sleep. I've got to go back. But that slowed things down. It slowed things down with getting Hearts and Souls and renewed and re-kickstarted. I'm supposed to have help. The individual who has offered help has been, they've had their own problems, health problems, etc. And I understand that quite a bit. And, I respect it because, I've been there. I'm there with them sometimes. But I also had a sinus infection for an entire month, not the flu, a sinus infection. Uh, and basically, uh, I've been miserable. Uh, so that's how things have been going. Uh, I also was down a little more than normal because my dog Tesla passed away. She got lymphoma cancer, and it was spread pretty broadly by the time we realized that she was having trouble. Um, and then it caused a stroke and had to have her put to sleep. And I don't like doing that. That breaks my heart. I have to make that decision. Um, but she was hurt, and it wasn't going to get better. And cancer treatment for dogs is nowhere near, you know, not within 400 miles of here is there a place that treats cancer for dogs. And even then, it's if you think it's expensive for humans, it's it's that for dogs as well. And it's not something I could have done. And I would have. I mean, I would have sold an organ in order to finance keeping her alive, but it's not in the cards. And I had adopted my new Great Dane last year, uh, and so losing her hurt quite a bit. It hurt the dog quite a bit, so she's been even more clingy than since I got her. Didn't even expect that dog to be mine. I thought it was going to end up my mom because she didn't seem to like me. She still doesn't, except me. She barks at most people, most men. Women, she's fine with. Mostly. There's an occasional she wants. And then this friendly old couple delivered my groceries because I have my groceries delivered because my anxiety keeps me from going into a grocery store except for very short, quick runs and only to the smaller grocery stores that we have. And they don't sell 90% of the food we eat. So I end up ordering it. And they made a mistake on our order. They forgot an entire basket of our groceries. So the first person they sent out hardly said a word, just, blah, 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 really nice, you know, wasn't impolite, but wasn't, you know, I was very nice. They weren't impolite, but they weren't, they had a lot to carry in and they didn't seem to want to talk or anything. They were just, I guess, tired. I don't know. I don't want to judge them. Um, but most of them have been very friendly before. And then with the late grocery delivery, this couple comes up, an older couple, they were working together, and they bring me the stuff that was all the refrigerated stuff that they left out of our order. And they're like, "Oh, a great day! Oh," and she just loved them. And I'm like, "You bark at everybody else, but not them? Okay, fine." She doesn't bark at me either. Whines, but you know, she's very protective and very, very not happy to be without me. If I leave, she watches out the window. But then again, when I got her, she was bones. Well, I mean, it looked like somebody had covered dog skeleton with a rag. And my mom says she's put on 100 pounds. I don't think it's like that. I think it's more like 80, but she's put on 80 to 100 pounds, and she's still a very skinny Great Dane. She may be a mix, not sure, um, but she's still skinny. I mean, you still see her ribs just enough, like what they say is a healthy amount of weight for a Great Dane. And she's hyperactive as heck, so she burns off calories like nobody's business. But she's a sweet dog, and she helped take this thing off losing Tesla, but she hurt over losing Tesla because Tesla was the one other dog who liked her. Um, and that's kind of prevented my game writing from moving forward. I have started a novel. It's a difficult novel to write, and I had to get a sensitivity reader, both for two subjects. One was religion, and one was on transgender issues, because the two main characters are a religious person and a transgender person. And I want to handle both of them with respect. I'm not being transgender myself. I don't know everything they go through. I've got many transgender friends who I've been asking, questions here and there. But I got somebody who's not of my faith to read it. And they're saying, you're making this character too, too good. And I'm like, okay, pull back. And the other one is saying, okay, they're reading for sensitivity issues. And they said, they read one part and they wrote down and they literally said, ouch, that hurt. But, they're making notes for me and they're going, but, I can see where that would happen because it does happen they're a transgender person who's my sensitivity reader. Although they've been busy and I haven't. Whenever they're active, I'm more active on the writing of the book. But I want to treat both with respect. I'm a religious person, which is what, and it inspired this religious character. But he's not an insert. He's better person than me, quite a bit actually. Um, which is weird because my friends think I'm some sort of super goody two shoes. I try and be a decent, kind human being. That's all. That's it. But this character is definitely a better person than I am. But I don't want him to be a Mary Sue because he's only inspired extremely loosely by someone having faith, not me directly per se. Um, but somebody who lives in a superhero world and deals with superhero stuff and the politics of the church and all that. And then the transgender character, like this person is reading it for me, and they get to a point, and they're like, they write this line, this, and then is this, and then they go, oh yes, definitely that, and I'm like, okay, that's helpful. This is stuff I want to see, because I want to portray both sides with respect and not overdo it. And there's some things in the novel that I definitely don't want to do. I don't want to make the religious person convert the transgender person from being transgender. I don't want them to try and rescue them and save them. No, no, no. The whole point of the story that I'm writing is different than that. I'm not going to tell you about it. You're going to have to read the book. But the point is just the fact that this person is religious, but not a prejudiced religious person. And there is a difference between that, because there are people who are prejudiced and religious, or at least claim my religion, and then there are people who are my religion who are not prejudiced and are wonderful, wonderful human beings. Um, and I have found a church that got those kinds of people, which just amazes me. And I'm very happy in that for myself, because they show joy and are helpful and are, where I live, we had a shooting a while back. And that's, the kind of shooting it was is not something that normally happens here. I mean, it's just not. We haven't had it. And this one was, another one of those, but they weren't like most of them. They didn't go to a spot and start taking people out. They were mobile. They were just going around killing people for just whatever. And that had a big impact on me wanting to write more superhero stories, more novels, than, because I don't think I'm going to break into comic books. I'm 47 years old. I haven't broken into them yet. But then again, I don't know the proper procedure to break into comic books these days. It seems to me that some of the best writers were actually writing other things for many, many years and get invited to write comic books, like J. Michael Straczynski, who I respect a great deal and think he is a fantastic writer. I love Babylon 5. I read his Rising Stars comic series. I did not read the Spider-Man that everybody complained about, but that ending was changed on him, which is why he will not work with Marvel. And I cannot blame him for not working with that Marvel, because they changed the ending on him. And that's not something you do to a creator you hired to do this in the first place. Not something, you don't go back and edit it for a different story. That's not what an editor should be doing. They're making sure that the words all work. They're not supposed to police the content, at least as I understand an editor. Now, in some cases, I can see editors back in the day probably did police the content. But as a comic book fan, I know two things. Comics have always been political, always. And two, sometimes they're very good at making a political point that nobody else is willing to touch. I know that both Marvel and DC have done fantastic jobs of that in the past. They've also screwed it up horribly. But it just depends on the writer and the creative people behind it. Part of what I'm working on in Hearts and Souls, though, is things that you see in comic books that don't get mentioned a lot in comic book role-playing games or super role-playing games, and that's how to have a exciting, thrilling adventure without any combat. No, I said no combat, not no conflict. There is a difference between combat and conflict. You can have an entire game session, 2 or 3 or 4 or 10, or your entire campaign could have no combat in certain genres. Now, for me, I like punching evil in the face. That I enjoy in a game, to be able to go, okay, that bad person has stopped. We saved the world. But you can't punch a natural disaster and stop it. At least usually. I have written some characters that have, so a little weird. But the health problems being hopefully minimized, I will get Hearts and Souls back together and out there. I've also had the fortunate, I have these fortunately two people who have been willing to read my proto work and help me steer away from problematic issues in my novel, and I was having a hard time with point of view. And somebody said that maybe I should kind of tell it as a flashback. And I'm not a big flashback fan, like writing a story in flashback. But in this case, by telling current story elements and then using it to build back this character arc, is working really well or really horribly. I cannot quite tell. It feels like I'm doing it right, doing the story right, which probably means I'm not, and I need help. I'm honest as a writer. I know sometimes I need help, but the readers have been very good and nice about it. The sensitivity reader for transgender and the religious reader, since they don't share my particular brand of faith, um, it helps keep me honest about flaws that such characters could and should have, and not writing unflawed characters because that's not quite fun. I like characters with flaws. Gives you hooks, especially in role-playing games. Gives you hooks to grab onto and pull them into things. And in the novel, that's the play. That's the conflict. It doesn't ever have to be combat, but there has to be conflict. And as a writer, as somebody who enjoys fiction, I read fiction all over the place. I read mystery fiction with no violence. I read romance fiction. I read science fiction. I read fantasy. I've read stuff aimed at teens. I've read kids' books. I mean, and sometimes the kids' books are really good, just for the artistic vision of the artist they hired to paint it. Like, I used to have a copy of Beauty and the Beast that was not, anyway tied to Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Not that that's a thing, but it was a wonderful, wonderful artistic rendition of that story, and I had the book simply because of the art. Uh, and that's one of the things I like about those kinds of things in children's books is they do get to be artistic and expressive when telling these stories that many people know. Um, but I do have people to try and keep me honest and keep my characters flawed, which is a good thing because I don't want to write them too perfect. I don't want to be, you know, I this character has to be perfect because I'm talking about somebody who's not a white guy. You know, a person who's not a white guy can still have flaws. White guys have flaws. Non-white guys can have flaws too. Non-white women, non-white people, whatever, or gay. You can still have a flawed character who has this thing that has nothing to do with their flaw. And that's where I'm at is representation matters. It matters. One reason the first superhero recorded as a hero, as superpowered in the Hearts and Souls role-playing game is an African American man. It's one of the reasons why one of the core, most recent teams members uh, who were alive until cataclysmic event leaves room for players to bring in their characters. And I'm still leaving whether they're dead or alive up to the GM, just saying that nobody knows what happened to them other than this. One is in a coma. We know that. That's the only body we found. And the reason for that is I don't want to, oh, I'm going to kill off this character just to kill them off like they do in horror. So, don't want to do that. Uh, what I want to do though is have flawed but interesting characters, both in gaming and in novels. And so I'm getting a little help with perspective and point of view. Um, and that's where I'm at. Just trying to get things done. I've also been working on what was originally going to be a space opera Chinese wushu game, but is actually going to be more of a feng sheng beng, and I hope I get that right pronunciation. Wushu and feng sheng beng, because it's more fantasy, space fantasy, space opera, space fantasy. And Ping Shing Bang is more what I'm aiming for. I found somebody that showed me this, and I'm like, wow, okay, you make a very good point, because that is kind of what I want to do, and I didn't know anything about it, never heard of it, hadn't run into it. Um, and they asked me if I'd seen this film, and I said, yeah, and they said, well, it's like that film. I said, just like that film? No, it's actually, they've made films, but they've not been translated into English. But they have books, and they have, it's very much a Chinese equivalent to Lord of the Rings. It's that world-shaking and impacting fantasy story, you know, except because it's Chinese, it's not spread as widely as at least Lord of the Rings has been. But it's a really, really awesome story and concept to examine. It's actually called Investiture of the Gods, in at least part of it. And it's there is a TV series, and Amazon Prime has it. Um, and I need to watch it. I'm trying to read the book uh, that's got little bits of the stories in it, but they're not complete. So it's very frustrating. But right now I'm just going through a Chinese bestiary and examining it for things that will be useful in a Chinese fantasy space fantasy game, um, which is kind of interesting because there's just like some of the stuff is just crazy weird in the bestiary, but it's no crazier or weirder than if you go look at ancient Dark Ages or Middle Ages bestiaries, and you're like, they had that, really? Yeah, but it's a fun read so far. It's just interesting. Takes a long time for me to read it though, because uh, the book is very small print. And I mean, even with my newer glasses, it strains my eyes after reading a chapter or two, and there's a lot there, just so much there, and I want to be able to absorb it and remember it. But I have a person who actually thought that, hey, well, here's some ideas, here's some things to look at, and that was really welcoming to make a new friend, uh, and have them provide a different direction from where I was going in terms of games. Because to tell you the truth, most space opera slash space fantasy games, almost all that I've seen, not all, but almost mimic one particular popular series that we're familiar with. Um, and sometimes they're twisted um, a little bit, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're clear. We scrape the numbers off, but that's it. Uh, and I don't want to do that. I want to do something that's completely left field. But I also want to do it in a respectful manner, because I'm not a person who likes the idea of uh, cultural appropriation. So I'm being very careful and very cautious uh, when approaching it. Do I think a Chinese author could probably do a better job writing this particular space opera idea, space fantasy idea, from cultural history and their experience with this particular story? And I understand I'm only using it for inspiration. It's not like literally I'm not going to rip chunks out of it and copy it. I'm just using it as, oh, okay, I see how this story structure works. Um, and I like these elements and these other elements, and we'll see how we can work them into space fantasy instead of magical fantasy. Uh, but I don't know of somebody Chinese who's writing that, and it's very inspiring to me as a concept because it is different than what we've seen before. Uh, it may take me 20 years to write it at this rate, but that's where I'm at. As I'm trying to write, I'm trying to get a novel done. I'm trying to be respectful of both cultures and homosexuality and transgenderism and religion. I'm a man of faith, but I'm not a prejudiced man of faith. And I think I said that, but I don't know if I said it in this version of the video. And there are two different kinds of people of faith, and we have stuck with these hangups that we have had, where we're justifying them and keeping them. We're not going to learn to do better than these hangups that we have. And then there are religious people that take a look and go, you know what? There are some things that are if you want to use that to justify your prejudice, that's wrong because that's your prejudice. That's not what this is saying you're using to justify it saying. The literal translations of this information is not that. Uh, and I'm a very liberal LGBTA supporting person. So I want my story to be good. I want it to represent both a transgender woman and a Christian man very well. I want my games to be representative, even if I am not able to hire people of different viewpoints than my own to help me all the time. I would love to, honestly. Um, and it's one reason I appreciated this sensitivity readers is because they didn't ask for money. They were willing to help me just to help me. Um, and if I could pay them, I would pay them. I really would because it's definitely worth paying for a sensitivity reader. But I'm a disabled man. I don't make that kind of money. I barely make enough money to buy groceries, pay for my car, and live. I do have enough to make sure my dog is fed every month. I promise that. I would rather starve than let her starve because that's the condition I got her in. And I will not let a dog do that. I will not. I have some standards that I just will not bend on. But that's my personal uh, view of things. Representation matters. I want people to be represented in my games. I want them to feel welcome. I may not have done it clearly enough in High Valor or Hearts and Souls First Edition, but I'm definitely working on it this time around. And while I don't have High Valor Second Edition planned anytime soon, because we did a little bit of revision and it still works perfectly functionally, especially if you read the rules. And I have a friend who's using the rules for a completely different genre. He wants to do an Old West game, but Old West and dinosaurs, because he bought this art book on a Kickstarter that he liked, and he wants to use that as inspiration for a Wild West game. And I can see that's interesting, but he wants to use the rules, and he had to ask me some questions about the rules because he's not a big rules guy. He doesn't like learning new rules, especially, uh, and he's mostly only played D&D or uh, the one popular superhero game my friends have. Um, and he's caught on to the heart of High Valley better than some people have, especially in translating it to this particular setting he's using. And I like that. I like that my friend is doing this. I respect it a great deal because you could have probably found a D&D. I know there was one, a D20 one anyway, that did it, but I don't think it was as good as this art book and his imagination are going to be. But that's because I respect his creativity. Um, because I know him and I've seen him do some really good stuff. But he understands the high value rules clearly now, and they're written down. I mean, it literally tells you A, B, C, D, E, and F. It has specific, like there is a specific. He was having trouble with a specific rule, and it says so right here. It's not like it's hiding it. But he's like, oh, I just missed that, and I'm like, yeah, well, it happened, and that's how game rules vary sometimes so much between one game table and another because somebody's been playing D&D for 20 years or longer, because third edition was 20 years ago, almost. Uh, but that's the thing is like, I've known people who go back to first edition and BX D&D, and when you go back that far, there are some things that the rules lay out. Here is how things work. And then there are things that they've added on because that's just how they learn to play. They're not necessarily in that booklet. Because I can read the booklet cover to cover and not find that rule that they're using. It's not in there. Somebody may have written it up in a fanzine somewhere, or they went and learned it at a convention and thought that was a neat idea, or they may have come up with it on their own. But fundamentally, the truth of that whole thing is that read the rules. Make sure that you are using the rules that are written uh, if you plan to, you know, stick with them. I mean, you're certainly welcome to make house rules for any game, but if you want to stick with running the game as written, make sure you read the rules and don't fall back necessarily on your history with previous versions of the game because that gets people really confused, especially when they've never played the previous edition. And all they have is this new book. So that's kind of where I am. I'm just meandering. I've spent enough of your time. I really should probably edit this down, but whatever. We're just kind of being conversational here. Uh, anyway, peace. Good gaming. I really do hope it is good gaming. And I hope you have a lot of different voices to make you inspired uh, to create. Because I'd like to see your creation. Not professionally speaking, but as a fan, buying your game, reading your game. So I hope you do write one, and I hope you make it something awesome. If you don't write them, enjoy them. Peace out.